I'm going to start the recording, and I would like to introduce Mr. Jeff Culver, who has worked for the Cabinet of Health and Human Services, or Health and Family Services since 2001. This includes working in Fayette County for 11 years and in Jefferson County for about 11. Jeff has worked in several areas during his time with the Cabinet, including adoptions, recruitment and certification, status offenders, ongoing adolescent, medically complex, and independent living. His expertise is with older youth currently in foster care, as well as former foster youth who have aged out of care. His current position with CHFS is Human Services Program Supervisor. This position supervises independent living specialists in the western part of the state, including Louisville. Jeff co-founded a nonprofit organization based in Lexington called Fostering Goodwill in 2006. The mission of Fostering Goodwill is to act as a resource for aged out youth of foster care and assist this population as they transition out of the state's care and become independent members of society. We're also welcoming today Miss Nikki Thornton. Miss Nikki Thornton is the Executive Director of TrueUP, which is a movement that empowers young people in foster care to lead self-sufficient, productive lives, and recently partnered with Kentucky Youth Advocates to expand its statewide reach. Nikki has served on several boards and committees. She is a trainer for trauma-informed care and Love Notes and is a certified youth care professional, level 3. Nikki is passionate about working with and supporting young people. She enjoys organizing, walking, and spending time with her children, family, friends, and dog. Welcome, Jeff and Nikki. Today's training is going to be an overview of housing and supportive services from the Department of Community-Based Services and local partners for young people with a foster care history. All right, Jeff and Nikki, thank you so much for being willing to share your expertise, and thank you attendees for your patience today as we got the training up and running. All right, I'll hand it over to you all.
Nikki, were you starting?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was waiting patiently for Jeff. Well, thank you all. We just want to thank you for having us today, and thanks again for everyone attending. We're excited to be here, and I'm excited to do the training with Jeff because I've worked with Jeff for a long time, and Jeff is just really dedicated to this work. So I'm really happy that we could do this together. So we wanted to start with the resources part, and Jeff's going to share that information. And then I'll come in and I'll talk a little bit about the process. So what happens when a young adult or community member or organization person contacts me? What does that process look like as we provide these supports with our young adults? Thanks, Jeff.
Okay. Now, well, I'll be able to share this, I think.
You should be able to.
Okay. Share, all right. All righty. Well, yeah, thanks for having us. And I just want to say, yeah, that I supervise independent living specialists in the western part of the state. And part of what we do is we work with youth who are definitely, we start working with them at 17, but usually at 16. And, you know, we start preparing them for aging out of the foster care system. So we have formal meetings at 17, before 18. And then if they extend 19, 20, and they can stay with us till 21. But we also, a big part of our job is working with youth who've aged out and just helping them identify resources and benefits in the community, just for the general public, but also specifically for stuff for them, which is what I'll go over now. So. All right. So the first big thing is, you know, everyone knows about is the tuition waiver. You know, the big thing about this is for youth who, all youth who've ever been adopted, no matter what age, are always eligible for the tuition waiver. But other than that, they have to have aged out at 18. So this issue does come up. You know, me and Nikki work a lot with community partners and we get emails. Some youth might think they have aged out. They think maybe they were in foster care, but it can get tricky sometimes. Maybe they were placed with a relative, and maybe we weren't even ever involved. But so it does get tricky there. But so if anyone ever has any issues or questions, they can always email me and I can look a youth up to see if they did in fact age out, because all these benefits that I'm going over, you must have either, mostly are for aged out. There's a few for adoption that we'll talk about. The big thing about the waiver is it changed a couple years ago. This is a great addition. It changed to age 28, which is huge. It used to be where they were eligible. Now this is still in effect. They have to start 4 years from when they graduate high school or earn their GED. But it used to be once they started, they had 5 years and it was a running clock, whether they attended or not. Once they started, they had 5 years. It got changed, I believe, 2 years ago, and now they are eligible for it up until age 28. So this is a huge thing because a lot of our youth, they're not necessarily ready for college, when they turn 18 right away. So it's good that they have another chance, that they can wait and that don't have to be pressured. Again, they do have to start within 4 years, but they can kind of spread it out and go to age 28 or 150 credits. The also big change with this is it's good for grad school now. So the old waiver was not applicable to grad school. So that's a huge thing. And again, this is all for state universities or colleges, including all the community colleges. Again, we do get questions if people want to go to private schools like Sullivan or Spalding or Bellarmine. The waiver does not cover that. All right. Next thing, which is huge, is called the Educational Training Voucher Funding. We call it ETV for short. Again, this is for youth who aged out at 18 or over. Also, this is good for youth who are adopted 16 or older. Again, that issue comes up. Sometimes you think, well, I was adopted, but it's only when they're adopted, basically older. But this is a huge benefit. Basically, if they continue their education, post-secondary education, they can get $2,500 a semester or up to $5,000 a year. So, and it doesn't matter if they take one class or they take 4 classes, they can still get $2,500 a semester. So that's a huge benefit. The maximum of that, they either can get it for 5 years or up to age 26. So that's really helpful for our youth as they, try to get on their feet and become independent. They are supposed to maintain a 2.0 GPA with that. They're pretty lenient on that, but, obviously they can't keep, if they repeatedly fail out, there will come a point where they're not eligible for that money. Again, all these benefits would be through our independent living specialists. Here in Louisville, we have 2, Tori Spiller and Stacy McAlmont. It's just really some simple paperwork they have to fill out, but that's who help facilitates that and then sends it up to central office to be processed. A huge program we started a few years ago is called Earn and Learn. Obviously, we feel, and honestly, I've always felt this way with our population. It used to be 10 years ago, it was like, go to college, the normal 4-year college. Well, that's not for everyone. And what we're seeing is really that's not necessarily the best way to go these days. And trades are so popular and with the cost of school. So we're really encouraging our youth to pursue trades, pursue short-term programs like that. So we started a program, I don't even know when we started, 3 or 4 years ago, where we will basically pay youth hourly for when they attend class. And we have, vocational and technical credentials that they can earn. And so that's been very successful. I think we've had like 35 youth earn credentials. And also we'll also pay them if they have not earned their GED yet. So that's been a really successful program. We actually are registering that right now for the spring semester. So if anyone's interested, and I'll go over this in a minute, but all this stuff is on our website that I'll talk about here in a little bit, but it's kyrise.ky.gov. That's where anything and everything related to youth in foster care or benefits can be found. All right. Another big thing that we just started this fall actually was the first semester. We have basically advisors for any youth who are attending any of the community colleges throughout the state. We have advisors in the KCTCS system specifically to work with them. So that's been huge. A big barrier for a lot of our youth is just, navigating the college process. It's difficult. It's hard to do the application paperwork, the FAFSA, signing up for classes. So we came up with this to have people specifically that can work with them and really give them a lot of attention and time that they, might need to do this. And then they also help them, we work with them, they contact us a lot so that they can hook them up with the services that they're eligible for that I'm talking about. So that's been a huge addition and really has helped our kids navigate that process. And that's something our specialists do too, but sometimes it gets overwhelming that we might not be able to give all the time they need. So that's kind of why we created these positions. And again, that's up to a lot of these benefits you'll see, they're up to 23. Our funding is federal funds, Chafee federal funds, and most of that ends at 23. Again, that the tuition waiver, that's not any funds. It's just basically we don't have to pay tuition. That goes up to age 28. And then the ETV funds is really the only exception. That is federal funds, but they can get that up until age 26. Another thing we started several years ago is called Fostering Success. That's a paid internship for former foster youth who aged out. This has been a really successful program. Of course, the pandemic really kind of hurt it a little bit, but where basically we hire our youth, they get paid by the hour. Some of them work for us, or they did when we're back in person now, but they would do jobs within our building, the L&M building. And then other offices throughout the state. But we also work with businesses in the community. They get paid, they get job coaches through UK. We hire them with that because obviously, things come up with our youth and, we're trying to teach them the skills and work ethic of what you need to do to get a job and maintain a job. So we hired some job coaches. So that's a program that's been very successful, and it's a 10-week program. We also, if they do well, they can sometimes, we can extend them another several, I think it's like 12 weeks. And then also several of them have just been hired by the companies that they work for. Housing, of course, this is the big need everywhere. We do have, decent resources for this, but unfortunately, like everyone else, at this time, they are filled up. The first one is Project Life. That's a partnership we have with Community Action, where we basically have 60 slots. Now, this is throughout the state, 60 slots where we can provide housing for a year for youth who aged out at ages between 18 and a half and 23. What it is it's a scale. So it's changed over the years. We used to pay for it. They had to pay for it. Now it's a combination where the first 3 months we pay for their rent. The next 3 months they have to pay like 20%. Then the next 3 months they have to pay 40%, and the next 60%. And then also we recently changed it that they had to be employed, because unfortunately, what we were seeing is just none of them were having jobs. They were supposed to get jobs. They never got jobs. And, we can bail them out some on the rent. We're very flexible with, we kind of don't follow that program precisely, but it was just getting to the point where some of them got evicted. So, because we do have a budget with that, but so we kind of say they do need to have a job coming into that. That's a recent change. We in the past they didn't have to, but they had to get one at some point. And again, that's just for 1 year. And Community Action provides case management for that. and kind of helps them out with that. And like I said, those slots right now are filled. Now that's fluid. That's probably more fluid than our other programs, but as of right now, they are filled. There is a waiting list for that. The other big one is FUP/FYI. These are slots throughout the state. Here in Louisville, we work with Louisville Metro. We have, I believe, 36 slots. We had it filled up, but what it was is, we had several who had the vouchers out there, but they hadn't leased up yet. So we kind of worked all that out. And then we had like 8 available slots a couple months ago. And of course they are now full. So, but again, that's for our youth who've aged out. That's 36 months of income base. They have to pay basically 30%. That one, it doesn't really have case management. It's supposed to have case management, but it doesn't at this time. And actually, I know federal guidelines just came out recently that possibly the 36 months could be extended a couple years, but we still haven't figured that out. We just started that program a few years right before the pandemic. So we do have some that are coming up on that 3-year mark. So hopefully we're going to get that figured out. There are certain requirements of whether they can get extended or not for 2 more years, but we have that in Louisville and Lexington. It's through Louisville's through Metro, Lexington's through Fayette County. Everywhere else, it's through Kentucky Housing Corporation, KHC. So they kind of run that program. But again, unfortunately, those are full throughout the state. We are trying to get more slots for that. And then, one thing I feel like that's underused and has been underused by us is the mainstream. And that's basically for young adults who have some type of diagnosed disability. Last I checked, I believe, again, this is through Louisville Metro, I believe there are openings here in Louisville. Normally, they just changed the application, so I'm not as familiar with it, but usually it's a diagnosed disability. Most of the ones we've done, they have gotten disability benefits, but I don't know that that's, definitely they have to have disability. It's just more of, do they have some type of diagnosed disability? Which, a lot of our youth do have some type of diagnosis. So that's one I think, that has openings that could be utilized. And of course, they don't, that does not have to go through us. That's a program with Louisville Metro. So, but like I said, right now, those are all full. We have a budget, the federal funding for our Project Life. We can only use 30% of our money towards housing. So that's why we only have those slots. We wish we could get more, but we use some of that money for some of our other programs. Healthcare benefits, of course, any youth who ages out, they are eligible for insurance until they're 26 years old. So, if anyone comes across a youth, we can help them get their insurance on real quick. They don't need to go into the L&M building. We have a contact in Frankfurt. We can just email. We used to do an application. Now I think we just need their address, to make sure their information is current, and we can get them on real quick, and actually a lot quicker than, they can go to the family support and do that, but it would always be faster to go through us. And the big thing with that comes up is, it's not automatic. They have to, all of our youth right now in care get Aetna, and a lot of them who aged out get Aetna depending on their age. A lot of them were with Passport. They had the choice to come to Aetna or not. When Aetna kind of took over and the state kind of had a falling out with Passport. But the thing that we see a lot with our youth is, usually every year or every 2 years, they have to kind of, update their contact information. And sometimes our youth don't do that or don't get back, or, they're so transient that they, whatever address they had, they're not on anymore, whatever phone they had, they don't have anymore. So it's important that they, be proactive and call their insurance, say, hey, do y'all need any, recent information, because they do get, if they don't fill that out, they can be dropped. Now we can get them on real quick, but that's usually what happens with a lot of our youth. We've done a good job of continuing their insurance. So when they leave, they're on it. We've done a good job. That was an issue years ago. They would be dropped and they really shouldn't have. And we've worked really well with Aetna to make sure that, when they age out or leave anytime after 18, that they continue to get that. So part of Aetna. Now, again, all of our youth don't necessarily have Aetna. So some of our older people, Aetna just came in a few years ago. Some of, when they came in, all those older youth, they were given the option to go there, but they could stay with whoever they wanted to. So for Aetna, they do give a free laptop. So that's a huge benefit that they can get just for aging out of care, basically. So again, they would just need to call Aetna. They're just, their main hotline number, and then they, get them. I'm actually involved in that process. I basically, a lot of what I do is verify youth for benefits. I get contacted by all kinds of people and just, hey, have they have a foster care experience? Did they age out? So I do a lot of that. And so I'm involved in the Aetna thing. So there are a lot of former foster youth. I'll be honest though, most of what I've seen is it's current foster youth. So we definitely want to spread the word to those who aged out, because this program just started 3 years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, right around the time of the pandemic. So, and like I said, Aetna had just come in at that time. But that's a good program, especially for those trying to go to school. The big thing, and I'm going to pull up another form here, but aftercare services. This is a huge benefit for youth who've aged out. Eligible up until age 23. They cannot be 23. And then, if they're in Project Life, there's certain things they can only get because we're spending federal money on them with Project Life. But these are funds that we can help with education, employment, housing. Let me bring up the form because I want to go over this a little more specifically, because this is what I see that we utilize a lot with youth who've aged out. Let's see here. Let me get this up here. All right. Here we go. All right, that kind of details the process. But again, the bottom line is you can contact me, or our ILS is here, and we'll help them get the paperwork. Again, we work with Community Action on this program. So we help fill out the paperwork and then we send it to Community Action. They are more hands-on with working out all the details with our youth. But here's the main benefits. I just want to make sure everyone's aware. Again, here's another option for a computer, up to $500. We can help youth get 500. Driver's ed and documentation. Some of these benefits are actually available to youth in our care as well. They're very similar, but driver's ed doesn't come up a lot with aged out youth. It's huge for youth still in our care. Employment assistance. This is one I think is huge that I don't think we utilize enough. I mean, we can basically, get them clothes related to work. So that's up to $300 they can get clothes. Educational assistance, if they have stuff they need to pay for GED or some type of, education purposes. College prep, any type of fees related to school or any type of exams they need to take. Housing supplies is a big one that we use. That's up to $500. So if you work with someone and, you help them get housing, we can get, up to $500. It isn't a ton, but it, can be helpful as they move in to their new place. Immigration cost is one that we just added that. Obviously, it's a huge issue with our youth who don't have social security numbers or don't have citizenship right now. It's difficult for them because they're not eligible for some of the benefits that other youth are, unfortunately. So we're trying to come up with more funds to help them out. And I'll say the state is not doing a great job of, helping these youth get the citizenship. And plus it is a very long process. Medical costs is another, big one that we can help out. Again, they should have insurance, but what we see is there's time periods they don't, then something happens and they have a bill, so we can do that. The next one's the biggest thing, the crisis hardship assistance, up to $1,000. So that's the one that we can use for youth. We get calls a lot with that. Obviously a lot of our youth need help, but they're getting behind with rent or utility deposits or whatever when they're trying to get a place. A big thing is the hotel stay. And I want to clarify, we will help with the hotel stay, but our kind of rule is they have to be close to housing. So, they have to be like, yeah, I've got this apartment lined up for next week. Then we will say, okay, you can use that $1,000 towards a hotel until you get into it. We can't, obviously $1,000 isn't going to last forever paying for a hotel. We had funds during the pandemic where we could put youth up for a hotel, and we had a lot of funds to use. So, but now that is over, we're kind of back to our normal situation. So they have to have a potential move-in date, or some of them might be returning to care. So we know, okay, they're coming back to foster care. And so we know we can get, put them up with a hotel for maybe a week or so. So, but we're really flexible on that. And we are, now the thing about all this stuff, it is a process. We can get it turned around pretty quickly, but we work with community action. We send it to them, but we are working with Youth Build. Nikki works with Youth Build. They have some funds for a hotel. So we are working with them. So if that situation comes up, they can pay for a hotel really quickly, a lot quicker than we can on this. I don't want to speak for them, but it seems like on the spot, where we have a process, but we kind of have a partnership now that if we communicate that and we'll say, yeah, we'll cover you, we'll reimburse you all go ahead and pay for it now because you can do it instantly. And then we'll put in the request, and then we'll pay them back for what they've done. So that's something we felt was a need, because it can sometimes take a week or so to actually get community action to pay for something. And we were seeing, obviously those young adults are in dire situations usually. So we're working with Youth Build to do that. And then we also have, we work with Fostering Goodwill, my program in Lexington, to do that. So final thing on this one is transportation. This is a big one too, that we can help youth who've aged out up to $1,500. If they are getting a car or something, we can match it. So if they put up, we can match up to $1,500. So that's huge. The big one we see in this is car repairs. So obviously, it just seems like a lot of our youth, they have cars, but sometimes they don't check those cars out, or they get ripped off or whatever. So we can definitely use money. And then we can also help reimburse for car insurance. So that's $1,500. All of these are lifetime. So it's, that's the maximum they have. And then the final thing is tuition assistance. Again, we haven't had to utilize this the last 2 years because we've had pandemic aid, where we've been able to pay former foster youth debt off from college. This has been huge. A lot of our youth, unfortunately, they don't do well, and then they have to pay back some of that financial aid, and they owe the school, and then they don't address it, and then it gets interest, and then it gets credit agency. So this has been huge. We have paid off a ton of school debt with this pandemic aid the last 2 years. But normally we do have that resource available, but ours is a match. So it's not as nice as what we had with all the pandemic aid money, but still it's a good benefit to have. All right, let me go back to that other form real quick. We're almost done with this. Okay, so that's the aftercare services. A huge thing that we started a few years ago, we have LifeSet, it's case management. I know some of y'all might provide case management. That was an area we were really struggling in. We've got a lot of stuff for our youth, but we didn't have case management. So they have been great. We can do referrals to them. They are really on top of it. They really work with the youth and identify what their goals are. And that one's a little more flexible. If youth left care and if they were in care after 17, we can do a referral for that, and even go back to 16 on certain situations. Then now it's great for here. LifeSet's only in certain areas. It's in Louisville and Lexington and surrounding counties, so it's great for Louisville. Another huge thing that's not on here, I want to make sure everyone knows, this is a recent law change. I think it went in effect in March. We used to have where youth aged out at age 18, they could return by age 19. Now they can return by age 20. So that's a huge thing that we are trying to spread the word out, because we're sure there's a lot of people out there who don't know that changed. And we've seen plenty of youth now, return to care after they turn 19. That rule has been in effect forever. So this is a huge change and a good change, where youth can, now come to us and potentially return. All this stuff is on, and I thought our website was on here, but it is on KY Rise. There it is on top. KY Rise. That's we came up with this a few years ago. We just wanted a one-stop shop for online. RISE stands for Resources for Independence, Success, and Empowerment. But everything about the information I just talked about, you can find on kyrise.ky.gov. It has contact information if youth are in different areas of the state, who their specialists are. There's an email there. Any type of event that we have it on there. The pandemic aid we just had, you could sign up that. We did master classes where we did educational classes and paid youth $250 just to attend. So we've been doing a lot of good stuff. Especially the past couple of years, we've had all this pandemic aid money, but in general, we've come up with more and more benefits and programs for aged out youth. And then one final thing is we also have a leadership group called Voices of the Commonwealth. That is current or former foster youth ages 16 to 22, who basically we work with. They help us come up with, okay, what's needed, what programs are needed, what policies are needed. In fact, they're the ones behind changing the tuition waiver, which was huge. I mean, they're the ones behind, a few years back, you couldn't get your permit if you were in state's care. The VOC helped us talk to legislators, and now kids can get their permit while in foster care. So, and they do other stuff. They're involved in anything that we do as far as planning. But yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to emphasize today. And again, everything is on that website, if you want to check that out.
Jeff, thank you so much. And thank you to DCBS for all of the great resources that you're offering to our community here in Louisville and across Kentucky. I just want to take a couple of minutes, because we do want to make sure that we save time for question and answer if anybody has any questions, to say that the main thing that Jeff and I wanted to communicate today was to reach out, as Jeff said. So if you come in contact with someone that's had a foster care history, regardless of what that history might be, whether they aged out of care, whether they were adopted, whether they aren't quite sure what the history is, if they come into your organizations or they contact you and they say that they were in foster care or had a foster care history, please reach out to Jeff or myself or Miranda with Youth Build, or Thomas Evans with Family Scholar House. There's several people to reach out to, but please reach out to someone, Danielle, other people from the Coalition for the Homeless, because we all work together. We all stay in communication and collaborate. So please reach out to someone so that we can get that young person in contact with the people who can help with all these resources that Jeff just mentioned. So that's really the number one takeaway for me, is to please contact someone if young people come to you and say that they have been in foster care or have that history. I just want to take a couple of minutes to maybe talk about the process just a little bit. so that everyone is aware of what happens maybe behind the scenes when I am contacted about a young person who has said they have a foster care history. So generally what happened is that an organization or a support person contacts me. It's kind of rare that a young adult seeks me out, particularly, but it does happen. The process is the same, whomever, really contacts me. What we first do is, of course, do a preliminary conversation, thank them, for contacting us. And then, as Jeff said, we get a verification, because it can possibly be a little bit confusing about if they were in foster care, what kind of time they spend in foster care, and then ultimately what type of resources will they maybe qualify for at that point. So we want to understand that they were in foster care and then get them connected. As Jeff said, a lot of the resources that he talked about are for young people who aged out of care, but we also have resources that are for just young people in general that have a foster care history. And so that's why we want you to reach out to someone, is because it's larger than just, having to age out of care or having to have just been adopted. There are some organizations in our community that support young people that just have a foster care history. Obviously, TrueUP is one of those. Our ages are 16 to 28. But as Jeff said, there's flexibility sometimes in those ages, because we just want to help people. And ultimately, we can get anyone connected to community resources if they contact us, whether they have a foster care history or not. We will still connect them to someone in our community that's doing really good work with young people and youth. So we'll go to that verification. Once that verification is provided, DCBS, if they're going to be able to provide resources, they will do their part to get that, get everyone connected in that way. And then I send everyone to Orphan Care Alliance, to OCA. You all received some information they provided to us before this training. And I send everyone to OCA because they have so many resources that are specific to foster youth. And so they have life coaches, and they have other resources that they can wrap around that young person that perhaps the young person did not tell me about. But as they're talking to OCA, then they're talking about maybe their whole story, and then they have just a real large amount of support that they can offer. They also are able to offer it quickly. I think Jeff talked about Youth Build being able to offer emergency hotel stays, really fast. And often when our young people are experiencing a situation that they have defined as a crisis or just a tough situation, we all want quick results. OCA gives quick results, and that's been my history with them. So everyone is referred to OCA. And then again, we're all working in partnership. So OCA knows what DCBS is doing, and DCBS knows what Youth Build is doing, and all these type of things. And then from there, we will start this process of where it's very foster care specific. So the next group that I normally go to is Family Scholar House. They might be on the call today, but I'll contact Family Scholar House, again, make sure that they're aware of this young person who is looking for resources and supports, because they also have a large amount of services that they can offer that can include housing, depending on the situation. So they're another one of our contacts. Jeff mentioned Aetna Healthcare. Again, because they do have the healthcare contract for the state for foster youth and adults and alumni, they are another person that we reach out to directly. And this is generally all in kind of an email to everyone. So again, we all know who's doing what, but they're part of that conversation. Jeff also mentioned LifeSet with their Youth Villages program. We want to utilize their case management when we can, so that the community case management can be used for other young people who need it and maybe don't have that specific, case management available like DCBS has. So we want to be able to leverage our resources. And that's the important piece of this conversation too, is that what we can do for foster care, let's use those resources. It does overflow sometimes, we know that, but let's make sure that every young person is getting, a chance to have our community resources. And foster care clearly has very specific ones that can be used. And so we can all tap into those when it's possible. And so then behind the scenes, I'm communicating with all of you, probably most of you on this call today. So once I've done those very foster care specific type of outreaches, then I'm reaching out to everyone, really great partners in our community, really great resources that support our young people in foster care. And we need your help. And we're wanting to take away as much of that support that you're providing as possible, so that you all again can focus on our other young people in the community who need your help. So then we just do follow-ups, right? So then we will just communicate with DCBS, with Youth Build, with, I don't want to name all the organizations because there's too many to name, but many of you all probably, like I said on this call, we will just follow up and say, how is that process going? How can we help? What do you need? please let us know what we can do, as well as follow with that young adult to see whatever additional supports are needed. TrueUP also has a peer network support. And so while the young person is maybe waiting to get connected to a resource, they can have some peer-to-peer support that's happening through our programming. And so that's a resource that's offered. We partner with the Voices of the Commonwealth at the VOC, like Jeff mentioned, with really great young adults there. And so everything is in partnership. It's all as allies. And so we are just all in collaboration within this work. And maybe the last thing that I'll mention that I think is important is that part of Jeff and I doing this training today is that we want to make sure that in our community that we are really here, to support our young people with a foster care history. Sometimes that requires additional capacity. And so what TrueUP and Kentucky Youth Advocates are doing is we have applied for a grant that we hope to get awarded. We will be finding out here soon, but we hope to be awarded. And what we will be doing with that grant funding, hopefully, in partnership with one of the local organizations, is providing emergency hotel stays and case management for those young adults, foster alumni who are currently experiencing homelessness and houselessness. The other piece of that grant that is really important too is that we will be doing some research. We'll be going upstream to understand the reasons why foster alumni are ending up in homeless situations. After hearing everything that Jeff said today and explained to us today, it is hard to understand possibly the reason why foster alumni would become homeless. And that's what we want to better understand. And we want to talk directly to those alumni who have experienced homelessness to understand that better, as well as our community partners, and then, additional, of course, research. So, all of this effort is going to continue whether we receive the grant or not, because we understand that, a lot of people are doing great work and a lot of people apply for grants, but it is our commitment that we help you all as community members and organizations focus on this foster care population part. And so we will keep you updated on the news, hopefully good news that maybe we get about this grant, but regardless, we'll continue to be in meetings with you all, asking questions and advocating for support for our young people. So I can't thank you enough to the Coalition for the Homeless, to Jeff, to everyone here today for showing up to listen and hear more and learn more about the resources. I always learn stuff from DCBS. They're a great partner. But Jeff and I really did want to have a young person here today to do the training with us as well. We reached out to a couple of young people who just weren't available because we'd like for you all to hear directly from them. But there may be someone on the call who has a foster care experience who could provide some additional support if needed. But Danielle, we were hoping if there were any questions or anything that I would have just a few minutes to answer those.
Of course. Thank you, Nikki, and thank you, Jeff. Does anyone in attendance have any questions for Nikki and Jeff? You can feel free to put your questions in the chat box or in the Q&A session. I'm going through and letting everyone changing permissions so that we can let you all talk. Okay, I believe everyone should have permission. So if you would prefer to come off mute and ask your question, please do so. If not, please just put it in the chat. We have a chat or a question from Shannon. Are there resources for those in foster care currently?
Yes. I was thinking about bringing those, but I mean, I have them, but they're similar. We have services. Basically, they're very similar to the aftercare services. So, um, I mean, it's the same categories. They can use them while they're in care. A big one we have, as I said, we use driver's ed a lot. We have money called extracurricular. We actually just changed that up to $1,000. We'll reimburse. You know, we always see over the years, I feel like our kids never are not involved in things they should be, sports, extracurricular activities, whatever. Um, so we added that. I mean, that's a huge thing that they can use every year, up to $1,000. We can reimburse their foster parents, or we can pay the vendor, whoever. Um, Other than that, they're pretty much the same as aftercare. We have the transportation thing, where we help youth. Same thing. We can reimburse for car repairs. We have the education thing. We can help pay off debt. We have the work clothes where, I mean, they're pretty much all the same categories. The only one different for the youth who aged out is the crisis assistance and the housing. Um, because hopefully our youth don't have that in care, we should be providing all their needs. So yes, those same resources are available.
Yeah, and maybe I would just add too, in terms of community resources as well, because the work that we do is very much community based as well. All of us, right, have a role, and so DCBS has the book, right, has the major and real responsibility, and then community steps in where it's helpful to partner with DCBS as well. I'll maybe give two quick examples. One of them is within Jefferson County Public Schools. There is a foster care liaison for Jefferson County Public Schools for our young people in foster care. And so her name is Anissa Lanier, Lanier. And so she is a support education wise. And then the other support I'll mention, not sure if it was in the information that you received prior to the meeting, is that OCA does provide mentors to the youth. So anyone under 18, OCA provides mentors. Anyone 18 and over, they provide life coaches. So that's another just a community support. And then Shannon, I know you're familiar with TrueUP, and again, that peer network and some of those supports that we do with organizations, particularly for that 16 to 17 year old group in terms of planning and monthly kind of support meetings or independent living type of meetings that are being right now virtually conducted through Junior League Louisville, another great partner.
All right, thank you. So an anonymous person put in the chat, what is the biggest barrier to reaching youth at this time?
From my perspective, it's just, you know, I mean, the youth that we're working with who are in need, you know, it's hard to get that information because they're struggling so much. You know, they don't know, and we've had so much new resources the last few years. We're constantly coming up stuff. And like I mentioned, the pandemic aid, we did a lot of good stuff. We had literally millions of dollars to utilize, and we spent it all. But you know, it's just getting the word out. And we were talking beforehand, you know, it's just getting back. You know, I was saying I want to do more stuff like this, or more in-person stuff, to get the information out, because so much has changed the last few years. And like I said, our youth, they don't know, you know, they're struggling, they're worried about their next meal or where they're going to sleep. So, you know, some of that stuff might not be applicable to them right now, but there is stuff that can help them right now. And so we're just trying to get the word out. But I just think kind of what we mentioned, you know, like everyone's seeing, just the housing is just a huge issue, um, of, especially for our youth. You know, they have little to no support. And even with the benefits we have, you know, it's very difficult for them to get their independence.
Yeah, and I might just add quickly that sometimes I'll be in contact with a young person, and then out of contact, I always ask, you know, please let me know how things go, or please stay in contact with me, that type of thing. But perhaps phone numbers change. Emails generally might stay the same. But I think that's why community is so important. Is that if they cannot reach me or Jeff, they can reach one of you all. And the drop-in centers we have in our community, another great asset, right? A young person maybe from a peer or maybe from Louis Connect or other means could then go to one of the drop-in centers and then be connected, you know, for those foster care resources. So I do think our community is well resourced. I think that we are, you know, in a positive way, you know, all working really hard and available to help our young people, but sometimes they do not seem to know about the resources. So they just got to get to somebody's door. And then we want to make sure, like Jeff said, that somebody's door is aware to contact us or other foster care people or anyone, honestly, doing work with youth and young adults so that they can get, you know, more directly aligned with those particular resources that are going to help them.
And one thing I want to add is, yeah, that's a big reason why we created the website. It was just something, you know, we're still promoting it. We still want to get the word out. We're constantly updating it, but that's where anyone can go to. You know, we didn't just make it for youth. We made it for foster parents. We made it for social workers, where they can be updated on what's current. And some of the money that we use from the pandemic aid that we're working on is we have an app that we're working on. So that's going to be a huge thing, kind of like Louis Connect but so we're just trying to think, you know, social media, we promote it on our social media, but, you know, I always notice our kids, they never like our page or anything. I'm like, we should do something to incentivize that, because we are really, you know, Lorraine Wilbur does a lot of this stuff. She's great. And she's trying to utilize every federal dollar that she can. And coming up, like, for example, I said with the pandemic aid, we started these master classes that were great. I mean, 2-hour classes, educational, they get $250. So we're going to try to continue that moving forward, because we got a lot of great feedback, especially from younger kids like 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And now they won't get 250 because we won't have that funding, but they might get 100. So we're going to continue to come up with stuff and try to reach youth.
Thank you all. All right, to respect everyone's time, we'll go ahead and end the Q&A session, unfortunately. However, I do know that Miss Nikki and Mr. Jeff would definitely be willing to answer questions for you all if you all have any more. Their contact information and resources will be emailed out to all attendees today, as well as a recording of today's webinar. I also want to highlight that our next session will be homelessness in the LGBTQ population. And that is being presented by Martel Okonji. And all you will need to do is go to our website and register for the next class. Thank you all again. Thank you again, Jeff and Nikki. It's always a pleasure, and you're just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to foster care, youth, and resources. And thank you again to our sponsor, Anthem Medicaid. You all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.